Yeah, I'd say students at Texas Christian University know pretty well where they stand, socially at least, among their peers. Everybody tends to see and understand college life and experiences similar to their own, while often speculating the context and story of others. This perception, I think, often lacks the opportunity to be truly explored, and stories that make people unique are often never told. But the reality may well be that nobody has bothered to ask. With the concept "dollar for your story," TCU students will better understand their peers through insightful and intentional discussion. In doing this, we hope to bring awareness of individual context and diversity at TCU in a meaningful and creative way. What's your story?
Darla Rubio, and this is Dollar for Your Story. So my dad was a Navy officer growing up. Really affected me. He was deployed a whole lot. But one of the best parts about him was being deployed was he got to come home, obviously, and I got to be on the surface ships. I got to be on the big, big battleships. And I remember seeing those when I would play soccer growing up. But going into them, I would go up, and a battleship's actually really freaking boring if you're a kid. Like, there are like infinitely better things you could be doing with your time. But on this battleship, they had a huge, I think it was like a statue of a, I'm trying to think of the word for it, Great Dane. Big life-size model of a Great Dane. Just completely made out of marble. I have no idea where these guys got it. But I was enthralled. I was like maybe 4 or 5 at this time, and I was convinced this dog was real. I would just go up and try to play with it. I would throw balls at it. I would bring it fruit from the mess hall. I would just do whatever. I was convinced this thing was real. And my dad let me play with this thing for a solid 45 minutes before he realized I wandered off into another one of the battle control stations, and I got green paint all over my hand. For those of you who don't know, if you touch the inside of those walls, covered in green paint, you will get filthy immensely quickly. So that was the day I got filthy, and my dad yelled at me, as well as the time I spent 45 minutes playing with a statue dog. I'm convinced that it was real. I even named it Scooby because I was watching Scooby-Doo at the time. So this is Darla Rubio, and this is Dollar for Your Story.
Hey, this is Brittany Dotson, and this is Dollar for Your Story. So I'm like the baby of the family, and a lot of the times my older brother and sister, they were the ones that would live with me, even though I'm like a child of 7. They were the ones that lived in the house with me. And so when my mom, she works at night, and when she'd leave, my brother would usually like throw a party if it was like a Friday night or like a Thursday night or something like that. And so I'd usually always be asleep, but one time I woke up, and so I looked out the window and I was like, what is all this noise? And so I see all these cars, and I see my brother and all his friends out there. I'm like, what? And so I called my mom, and she ends up like getting really upset. And so I go outside and I hand him the phone. And it's just really bad because it's really funny because I always snitched on them. And to this day, when my brother and his friends get together and I see them, they always remind me of how I used to snitch on them. And always tell my mom because she worked at night. I was like her little sidekick.
Hello, this is Mitch. This is Dollar for Your Story. I could tell you kind of my route to America. So it's kind of a full circle. I was on holiday when I was 3 years old again in Orlando, Florida, and I loved the water, and we stayed in a condo which had a pool. And we'd get back from Disneyland, and off would come my clothes, and my parents would follow my clothes all the way to the pool, and they'd look, and I would be there at the bottom just smiling, couldn't swim, wasn't scared. I thought I could walk on water. So when we got back to England, my mum decided to teach me how to swim, and 2 years later I'd finished all the badges and got picked up by a club. From then on, I decided that I really loved the sport and put a lot of time and effort into it. And by the time I was 11, I was a national champion for my age group. At 13, I got recruited for the best club in Europe called Plymouth Leander, which we currently have an Olympic champion and record holder, Ruta Malutite from Lithuania. So there I went to a boarding school 300 miles away from home. I left home when I was 13, trained there for 4 years, and then got in contact with TCU here and was recruited, brought over to Texas, and there ends the full circle. So it's been a lifelong career and a brilliant way to see the world and come back to the USA, and hopefully I'll be able to stay here.
Dollar for a story? For your story. For my story, okay. I'm Amanda, and this is $1 for my story. And I won the cheerleading worlds with my team, with my cheer team, Woodlands Elite, and we competed against 58 teams, and the cheerleading worlds is like the Olympics of cheerleading. Is that good? Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
This is Bonnie, and this is $1 for my story. I am a firefighter, and it's kind of one of those things that usually people like me don't do, but I thought it would be cool. So I went through the program, and I got accepted, and I showed up the first day, and they give me this gear, and it was the first day of school, so I had my hair in these like little curly things, and I looked totally ridiculous next to everyone else in the academy. So I got my glove fitting, and they didn't have any clothes that were like small enough for me or any boots, so we had to order some new ones for me to do that. And then I started training like everybody else, and physically it was pretty demanding. The first time I ever actually fought a fire was such a cool experience. You have to go through a lot of training before you get to that point. And I was wearing like red lipstick that day just to kind of show up, you know, hey, I'm Bonnie, I can do this. And I did it.
Hello. Okay, so a short story that makes me unique. A time when I was Mickey Mouse at Halloween, this was about 3 years ago, and endured one of the craziest nights of my life. Basically, to make a long story short, I was Mickey Mouse. I had gone to a party with Lex Luthor and an emo kid, and the Venture Brothers were there too. And basically, the party was raided and people were getting handcuffed left and right. But through the power of Lex Luthor, he was able to carry me and this emo kid, one arm underneath each arm, and successfully bust his way out through a window, might I add. And it was just an amazing time. He basically carried us literally on his back to our vehicle, where then we successfully ate IHOP pancakes afterwards. And that's a true story. That is actually a true story.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm Brooke Boren. This is $1 for your story. So this one day I fell on the ice and I almost broke my back and ended up in the ER. And so I was supposed to be on bed rest for a few days. But instead of lying in bed 2 days later, I drove to Austin after classes with one of my roommates. And we went to a Panic at the Disco concert, like totally random. And then drove back right after the concert. And it hurt really badly, like my back still, but it was really worth it because it was one of the best nights of my whole life. Is that a minute?
That's perfect.
Wow, super great.
All right, I'm Jeannie Murdoch, and this is $1 for your story. I remember I've been a swimmer my whole life, and when I was really little, I was on the country club swim team, and my favorite day was the game day when they would throw tons of candy into the pool, and we would get cups and fill up all of the cups with candy and eat it all, which was probably really unsanitary, but we thought it was the best time. And then my favorite event, though, is they'd get these giant watermelons and cover them with butter and then throw them in there, and all of us had to try and get it, try and hold on and bring it up to the top. But it was impossible. We'd all come up and we'd be slippery, and we'd be like fighting with each other, throwing watermelons, and it'd be slipping everywhere. And I don't know, it was a great time. I never won, but it was always the best day of the summer.
Hey, my name is Ori, and this is $1 for your story. I was born in Guatemala, and I grew up in Israel. So how it's required by the government in Israel, I made the 3 years of military service. I served as a paratrooper, and an interesting story about the military service is the way we jump from planes. I had in the overall 15 jumps. 7 were during the day, and the rest were in the night. It's pretty amazing, just the fact that when you get on the plane, that the only way that you are going to get out of the plane is by jumping and not arriving in some other place. So it's a pretty great experience just to jump from 600 meters and fly and see everything from the sky. It's beautiful. It's great.
Okay. Can you say it this time?
I'm Hailey Brown.
I'm Jewel Lewis.
And
this is $1 for our story.
Yes. The first time we met.
I knew she was my roommate. Like, I don't know how I knew. I just knew. And I was like, hey, do you need help with your stuff, unpacking? And she was super sweet. And then I hated her.
I didn't like Jewel because I sent her a message on Facebook about a month before we moved in, and she never responded to me.
I never actually got it. It was actually in my inbox as spam.
The lies
so
you tell.
I'm not lying. I swear to Bob. It was as spam. So listen, I never got your message. I found her message sophomore year, and we started laughing about it. Well, I was laughing. She was still mad. All right, well, there you go,
That's
people.
how we met.
That's how we met.
Hey, this is Dara, and this is $1 for your story. And I'm going to tell the story from my grandfather, actually, not from me. So my grandfather was born in 1909, and during Prohibition, instead of doing normal things that college students would do during Prohibition, in the basement of the Wichita State University chemistry lab, he brewed his own moonshine, and then it blew up, and he was kicked out of school and had to reapply 2 years later. And then he became a really respected dentist. So, yeah, my grandfather was way cooler than I was, in other words.
Hi, this is Cathryn, and this is $1 for your story. When I went to National Boy Scout Jamboree in 2010, I was one of 300 girls in a 40,000 person camp, and they asked me to be in a commercial, which was shown in front of all of the Boy Scouts, and it was really funny.
This is Alexa, and hey, this is $1 for your story. Can I just say? When I was little, I was actually very unathletic, and because of that, my parents kind of gave up on me on teaching me how to ride a bike and swim. So out of my whole entire family and out of all my friends and people I know, I am the only person that doesn't know how to ride a bike or swim.
Hey, this is Erin. This is $1 for your story. And I'm going to tell a story about how I was born. I was born through a C-section, and when I was born, I was still in my embryonic sac. Was that long enough? The story's supposed to be false information. So I have a twin sister, and the way that my parents told us apart when we were younger was to paint my sister's toe purple. Otherwise, we would never know who was who. And I could actually be the wrong twin right now. But I talked to my parents about it, and actually, I'm actually Erin. They have proof, so it's okay.
So my name's George, and this is all for my story. So last year, when I was a freshman here at TCU, I went on a sorority formal with one of my friends as she invited me. And we were getting ready and everyone was having a good time. And then one of her friends started to have an argument with her date. And so on the bus, I saw this happen. The two, like my friend and her friend, congregate together in the middle of the aisle. I'm sitting right next to her, and they talk very loudly about switching dates. And so then they have this conversation, and they realize they're talking loud, so they start to whisper. And then about 5 minutes later, my date turns around and goes, "Hey, how would you feel about switching dates right now?" And then proceeded to get up, walk over, and sit down in the other seat. And I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine with it. That sounds good."
Okay, so this is John. This is John, and this is $1 for your story. So when I was a little kid, around 3 to 4, I used to be obsessed with tigers. And one of my hobbies as a kid was always to dress up in random costumes that ended up making me look like a tiger. So when I was little, I'd always be running around my neighborhood when I could escape my parents' house, running around in a tiger costume. So when the police found me on numerous occasions, they'd always knew which house to take me back to. I was just known as the kid who'd run around in a tiger costume with cowboy boots. And so whenever my mom would be planting flowers in the front yard, I'd be hiding behind trees in a tiger suit, jumping out and growling at the cars coming by.
It's not. My name is Madison. This is $1 for your story. Okay, Peru and Alaska. Both were really cool. No, both were really cool and really different. Peru was really special because it was a mission trip, and I got to see it. It was just beautiful. And the kids we worked with were so grateful and so sweet, and they had nothing, and so it was like really inspiring how you could have nothing and be so happy, you know, because you appreciate the little things, whereas here I think we get caught up in a lot of the materialistic things. And Alaska's just beautiful. Bye.
Hey, this is Shelby, and this is $1 for your story. And my story is of how I was a smart aleck as a child. And it was one Easter brunch, and we had a lot of family and friends over eating this big meal at our house. And I was being my normal smart aleck self and probably making some sort of bathroom humor at the table or something. So I got sent up to my room. My mom came and got me after a while and brought me back to the table and said, "Okay, Shelby, I think that you owe the table an apology." So I kind of looked back at her and then looked down at the physical table and said, "Sorry, table," and then just marched myself right up to my room again. The end.
This is Katie, and this is $1 for your story. So my story is about a time when I was a music leader for my church camp. Me and my friend Anna, who was leading music with me, we were just messing around, and then one of the tech guys came in, and we didn't know this at the time, but he was a really awesome piano player, and so he sat down at the piano and just started improvising over us, and we stayed in that chapel until like 3 o'clock in the morning, just making up random songs and playing whatever we wanted to play. You know, that place was already magical enough as it was, and then that was one of those experiences that just made it even that much better.
Okay, this is Colin Springmeyer, and this is $1 for my story. So my junior year of high school, I was on the varsity soccer team, and we were in the second round of playoffs. It was 2-1 going into halftime. Coming into the second half, they scored a goal in the last 19 seconds of the game because I accidentally hit it on the outside of my foot, and it was scored as an own goal. And so we ended up going into double overtime, and we ended up scoring in the last 10 seconds of double overtime.
Okay, I'm Mike Lambert, and this is $1 for your story. Okay, so in 11th grade, I was on the junior varsity baseball team. I wasn't very good. I was put out into the field during a game, and a line drive came straight towards me. And I'm ready for it, and it starts to die down, so I kind of start running up on it. And I'll stick with the excuse that the field was awful. So there was this ant bed right in front of me, and I trip, and I fall flat on my face. Ball goes over my head. And so inside the park home run, I feel horrible. Like, next pitch, same things happens, except this is a shot. Like, nobody could have got this. And it goes right over my head, and I'm just embarrassed, and it's just terrible. So.
My name is Sam Kent. This is my story about my mom. So my mom's a bit of a liar. She's a bit theatrical. She has this thing on April Fool's Day. She'd always used to get me as a kid. I'd never expect it. Particularly one year I woke up. It was about 7th grade. She woke me up. I was really tired, okay? And I knew that I had a soccer game, and I was like, oh, it's like 8 o'clock. I gotta go to the soccer game. She's like, Sam, it's okay. You don't have to go to the soccer game because there's a bunch of gypsies on the field and they're camping out. I was like, oh, yes, great. She's like, yeah, they're trying to move the gypsies off the soccer field, but I don't know if they're going to be able to in time for your game. I'm like, oh, that's fine. Like, oh, man. And she's like, oh, April Fool's Sam. I was like, oh, my God.
My name's Lalo Ramon. This is $1 for your story. I'm from Acuña, Mexico. It's right on the border with Texas. I come from a family that's been in the ranching business for a long time, and we've done a whole lot of rodeos. And probably about 3 years ago, I was getting ready to ride a bull for a rodeo. So I was in the chute, and I got on the bull. I got cinched up, and they opened the gate. I rode it for about 4 seconds, fell off, and the bull landed on my foot. And, I woke up about 2 minutes later and found out that my foot had been broken by the bull. And yeah, it was a pretty traumatic experience.
My name is Jimmy Green, and this is for $1 for my story. When I was about a year to a year and a half old, I was hanging out with my family in our backyard. My parents just built a brand new pool where I lived in eastern Kentucky. And I was there with my younger brother, my older brother, and my older sister. At the time, they previously didn't have a fence around the pool, and they were distracted playing with all of us, and they didn't realize, but I fell into the pool, and they didn't know about it. And so I was underwater for about a minute and a half, and ended up that my dog jumped in and started barking, and was the one that discovered that I was in there, and technically saved my life. I don't remember any of it.
This is Steven. This is $1 for your story. This is a story about how one time the woman that cut my hair started crying while she did it. I was at Supercuts, and it had just been Valentine's Day, and we were talking about making small talk about holidays. And she asked me what I did for Valentine's Day, and I said, I didn't do anything because it just recently happened. And she told me that her boyfriend didn't believe in Valentine's Day, so they didn't do anything. And I said, that's really sorry. I'm really sorry about that. I didn't know what to say. It was kind of awkward because this is the first time I'd met this person. And then she informed me that he broke up with her, and she started crying a little bit, and it wasn't little tears. It was Oprah, ugly cry, big tears. I didn't know what to do, so I was just sitting there, and another lady came over and kind of comforted her for a little bit. But she'd only cut half my hair, so I didn't know if we were gonna finish the job or if I had to get up and leave. But finally she was like, I'll go ahead and finish. So she finished it, and then I paid and I apologized again. I don't know why I was apologizing, but I just felt the need to apologize on behalf of the male race. And I left, and I didn't go back there again. So that's my story.